And your
All right.
commercial
Well,
has
hey,
started.
good morning, Eagle Division, Achievers Region, and the great world of Salad Master. We want to say welcome to everybody being on the call today. Today is going to be awesome. And as you know, today is a great day, right? Because it's Monday, and we love Mondays, right? We get to celebrate from the weekend. We get to look forward to the week that is ahead of us. And if you missed the call, I just want to bring everybody back. If you missed that call from Evelyn Sheridan on Friday, get the video. That was an amazing, amazing, amazing call that she did all about vision. How do you have vision for something greater? And I know if you're anything like me and you were on that call on Friday, you've been thinking about it. I know I have. I've been starting to say, man, what is my vision for this week or this month or the rest of this year? And how do I really visualize the details of it to see those come about? And we know that when we visualize, it definitely comes about, which is super duper great. So today's call is going to be something very special, something that we haven't done. I don't know that we've ever done this on a nice call before. And that is today we're going to be talking about money management. How do we take the money that we earn from commissions, that we earn in our dealerships, and how do we make it work for us? If you're anything like me, I know that there has been times that I have, I've got done with a historic month. I remember I was working for a company called Service Master. That's right, Service Master. Now I work for Salad Master, right? We like to keep Master in our name. And I was working for Service Master, and I got my W-2 at the end of the year from the company, my report, right? And it said that I had made almost $100,000 in a year. And I was really excited about that until I realized that I had nothing to show for it. I had made $100,000 in a year, and I had come to the end of my year and I had nothing. I didn't have really any much more in my savings account. I mean, I had some really great trips, and I had some really, really cool clothes, so that I could look really fancy like Mr. John Robinson, right? Like I could look fancy like that, but I didn't have any assets. I didn't have any houses. I didn't have any investments. I didn't have anything to show for it. And that began my disgruntledness with saying, I've got to figure out how money works. I've got to figure out how I'm going to utilize my money and how to make my money work for me, because the system that I've been using isn't working. And I want to create a legacy for, I want to talk about my family. I want to talk about, one day I want to open my own company, and, I need to be able to manage my money. And you may be and that may be you. I know we're going to talk about today about how we usually utilize our money, how we spend our money. And for most of us, what ends up happening is that we have two accounts. Most of us have two accounts. We have a general account and we have a savings account. And we've got our paycheck comes in and we've got X number of dollars. And then we know this little portion is going to go to rent. We got to pay our cell phone and our car insurance and maybe a couple other things. And then we've got this leftover up here that just kind of sits in there, and we just kind of spend it as we go, right? We kind of like budget, okay, I've got $700 to last me for the next 2 weeks or the next week. And I've got to make that work with X, Y, and Z that I've got. And that's how we end up, that's how most Americans run their budget. And that's why actually most Americans are broke. That's why most of us here in America don't have a huge savings account or net worth. But we live paycheck to paycheck because we wake up every day and we just kind of spend money, and however we spend the money is however the money goes. But it doesn't really have a plan. And a lot of times we're very, if anybody else is like this on the call, but we spend our money in such a way that it's almost like an emotional attachment. It's almost like I take my little bit and I hoard it to see what I get to do this week. It's very much like we're in junior high and grandma and grandpa gives us $100 to go spend. And we're like, oh, what am I going to go buy with my $100, right? And we get really excited. But we don't think about, how can I leverage this? Is this really this $100 mine? How am I going to spend this? Can I invest it? Or man, you know what? I really need that latte. I really need to go out to eat. I really need those new clothes. And we just end up going throughout our day. So today we're going to talk about, how do we take that $100 we got from grandma and grandpa? How do we take that $1,000 commission check? How do we take that $10,000 commission check? Or like last October, we had somebody get a $22,000 commission check. How do we get that? And what do we do with it? We know that the reason that people that win the lottery, the reason they end up going broke is because they never learned financial management. They never learned financial stewardship. how to manage the money and direct the money in such a way that it works for us, as opposed to just being, oh my gosh, I finally got some, let me hold on to it. But how do we direct it and guide it? And what I'm going to be teaching today comes straight out of a book called Profit First by Michalowski. And so I can't really spell that, but it's called Profit First. It's very easy to find on Audible. It's a great listen to. He reads it himself, and it's a great book. And it's also the principles that Salad Master teaches and called the 5-account system, which it's been affectionately called, though there may be more accounts or there may be less. And the teaching that we're going to be doing today, this teaching 4 simple principles I'm going to share with you today about how we manage our money. Now, how this came, how he came up with this system, Mr. Mike, how he came up with this system was actually by watching a PBS show. And this was just something on PBS he was listening to, he said, late at night, public broadcasting. And it was all about weight loss. And it's funny how a lot of the principles that we deal with weight loss also show up in business. And here they are. And here are just 4 simple principles you can use for weight loss. By the way, everybody, I recommend you write this down. You're going to want to refer to this later, okay? Because you're going to use this in your dinner shows, especially when it comes to the health page, right? We're going to talk about, you're going to use that in your dinner show. So we're going to apply these to our business. So here is number 1. And Stan, I'm looking at you through this whole thing. So Stan, if you see me jittering too bad or the connection's bad, just wave your hands at me so I can see you, and I'll stop for a second, let the connection kick on. So there's 4 simple principles. Number 1, we all know this, using smaller plates, right? We know about using smaller plates. So there was if you're not familiar with this, there was a video that came out, it was about, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. And it was a buffet line that this company had set up and said, hey, come have dinner at our office. So their clients and people come in to have dinner, and they've got this buffet line, and there's servers going around, but it looks like a buffet. So this lady grabs her plate and she fills it up with food. And then as she gets to the end of it, the waiter walks in and goes, oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be the one that serves your food to you. So here, let me take your plate for you to the table. And he grabs it. And as he grabs it, he goes, Hashoo! Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I just sneezed on your plate. And then he puts the plate down on a scale that nobody can see. And then that was a 12-inch plate. And then he hands her a 10-inch plate. And then she goes back through the line and gets her food. He weighs that one, which nobody can see. He goes, oh, let me take that for you. I won't sneeze this time. And he weighs the plate, and then he brings her the food. And then after he had done that, he interviewed and he asked everybody, hey, did you put the same amount of food on the first plate as you did the second plate? Which they didn't know that there was a difference. And the people were like, oh, yeah, it was exactly the same amount of food. I just redid exactly the same thing. And what they found was that they ate 30% less. Which was interesting, right? And we all know about that. Use smaller plates, you eat less, right? Because it's how you visualize. Number 2, so number 1, use smaller plates. Number 2, eat sequentially. We know that when we eat our high fiber foods first, like if you're hungry, we know that if we eat all the vegetables first, or a handful of almonds, and and get all that good nutrition inside of us, then when we go to eat the junky food like the pastas or the Alfredo sauce, whatever, we're going to eat less of it because we fill up on fiber first. We know that there's the 2 sensors in our stomach, right? The volume sensor and there's the nutritional sensor. That's the reason you can eat a whole eat a whole pizza and underneath you're still hungry. Or you can eat like a good salad with avocado and you get full sooner and you stay full longer, right? That nutritional sensor, right, in our stomachs. That's the second thing is eat sequentially. Number 3 is remove temptation. This is something that I've been practicing for a long time. That if when you're going through the grocery store and I go to do it and I'll go to reach for those Chips Ahoy cookies, right, or the chips. And then I'll say to myself, if you don't buy it, you won't eat it, right? So because when you're hungry, if you're sitting at home and you're hungry and you're sitting there in your pajamas watching TV and you get that craving for cookies and you don't got any in the refrigerator or in the pantry, you're probably not going to put on pants to go down and get cookies, right? Right? We're just going to deal with whatever we got and figure it out. So remove temptation. And then the fourth one we've got is have a rhythm. And this is what they talked about, that if you eat regularly, you will avoid overeating. So if we eat on a regular basis, like 4 to 5 meals a day, small meals a day, it avoids overeating, because if you wait till you're starving, I'm so hungry, you're normally going to overeat, right? And so what that does is that creates these peaks and these valleys, and these peaks and these valleys. So number one, use smaller plates. Number two, eat sequentially. Number three, remove temptation. And number four, have a rhythm. Okay. Now, to kind of set up a little context to share with you about how we take those four principles and we're going to apply them into business, I want to tell you a little bit about what we've all been taught and what Melissa Curry taught me, and I will forever be grateful for this, and I'll talk about it more later, is about our 5-account system. So in our dealership, my Salad Master dealership, we have about 5 accounts, right? Now, we obviously have the general account where everything immediately gets dropped into. But then we have other accounts. We've got a savings account. We've got a product account. I've got a travel club account. We've got a taxes account. And we have just an emergency fund account. So we've got different accounts that we fund that we've got available. That's why we call it the 5-account system. Now for you, you'll have to figure this out and what this looks like in your life, but this could look like you have your general main account, and then you have other accounts. Maybe you have the emergency fund account, you have a travel club, a mortgage account, a utilities account, a cooking show for food and fuel. Maybe you have a college fund, or maybe you have a retirement account. You've got these different accounts that you have set up at your bank where you can put money in. So that's kind of how the 5-account system works. Now let's apply those 4 cooking principles, or those 4 weight loss principles, to our business. So here's number 1. So let's talk about this profit system works with our money management. Number 1, using smaller plates. So there's something called the Parkinson's law. And the Parkinson's law, what this is that it's the demand for something grows to reach the demand. Oh, I'm going to have to review my notes here. The demand for something grows to meet its respective, sorry, I wrote something down wrong here. And this is important. The demand for something grows to meet its supply. That's what it is, to meet its supply. So if there's a large supply for something, the demand will grow for that. If there's a low supply of something, it will get smaller. Think about this, guys, with toothpaste, right? You get that brand new bottle of toothpaste, right? That brand new tube. And what do? We put a good gob of toothpaste on there, right? And we'll just do that. But then have you ever noticed that maybe it all gets squished down to the bottom, or you got just that little bit left, and you're like, oh, and you push out that little nub on there, and you just, right on my toothpaste, right? And then that becomes enough to brush your teeth, right? At first it was the big gob. Now that you got less, it's a little dab is sufficient to brush your teeth. And that's that Parkinson's law and thing, that if you have more of it, right, you're going to use more of it. If you've got less, you'll be sufficient with what you have less. And so, and you'll be okay with that. So, and this really comes into when we're talking about those small plates, we're talking about when we're using those. Have you ever had a surprise bill? Okay. Like a surprise bill that comes up, like rent, like your car insurance, like tires on your car, like your car registration, like, oh my gosh, did you guys know that Christmas happens every year on the 25th? Did you guys know that? Every year, Christmas happens on the 25th. And I tell you what, come about December 2nd or 5th, all of a sudden, it pops up on me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we need money for Christmas, right? And we have that. And so what happens is that when we use smaller plates, or in our case here, accounts, right? Smaller account systems, what happens is that we end up funding those accounts. So when we use plates, instead of using one big plate, right, called our general account, but when we create smaller plates, like one that is for Christmas, one that is for car maintenance, one that is for our dinner shows, one that is for our travel club, one that is for our emergency account. When we have these smaller accounts or smaller plates and we put money in them, we will use the money that we have in those accounts, and we actually know what those accounts are for. They're not just some general, oh my gosh, this is just so great, look at what I have. Because if you don't see the money, you traditionally won't spend the money, right? And so, because there's 2 things that happen when we have less. So when we have less, there's 2 things that happen. Number 1, we become frugal. And number 2, we become creative, right? So, and I'll just, because I'm looking at you, Stan, so we're going to talk to you, Stan, like if you've got $5,000 in the checking account and you want to create an installation on the wall, maybe it's the free set program and you want everybody to focus on that when you come into your dealership, if you've got $5,000 to do that, you come up with some really creative ideas, right? But if you have $100, you're going to get really creative and really frugal, and it probably is actually going to come out better because you got frugal with it. So it's kind of like when you go to Starbucks, right? And you go, man, I'm going to go eat some Starbucks. But if you only got $3 in your account, that pot of coffee at home doesn't look too bad. And the same thing becomes true with our accounts, that when you've got a smaller amount in your account that maybe says travel fund, like this is what happened to us last year. We were going to take the entire team on a travel club. And Derek found this great place over in Bend, Oregon. It was a stunning place, and it was $2,000 for 5 days, right? So it was a big amount, $2,000. And I looked at him and I said, honey, we don't have $2,000 in the travel club fund. We have $1,000. And he was frustrated. But I really wanted it. And I was like, I know. So he used that $1,000. He went out and looked, and we found a place that was significantly better, closer, and near a ski resort that we could go skiing that was only $1,000. It focused us to be creative, and it focused us to be frugal. Now, the same is true when it comes to all of our personal accounts. So here, I want to give you 2 stories that hit home for me and kind of what we did. One was, and how this worked for me, was that when we have a general account, we think we have all that money, when in fact we really don't. So when I first started putting this system into place, and let me tell you guys, it wasn't all that easy, right? And I take my money and I put it between these different accounts. And I remember the very first time as I was like, oh my gosh, I've got $14,000 in our business checking account. Okay, I got $14,000. But then when I looked in my actual account, the money I had to spend, once I put the money in all these, I really only had $1,400, right? I only had $1,400. And I called Melissa Curry and I was so sad. I was like, I have so much money in the bank, but I only have this amount in my bank account that I can use. And she said to me, Jeremy, it's better to know that you only have $1,400 than to think you have $14,000 and then spend all that, right? You ever done that where all of a sudden you get your big commission check and maybe it's $2,000, maybe it's $3,000 in your checking account, and you get real excited and we go and spend that money, right? And then only for things to pop up like Christmas. It just happened to show up this year on December 25th. Or maybe your car insurance, so the 6-month premium is due. Or maybe your car registration just all of a sudden came up due, right? They're not surprises, but what happens is that when we don't have our money coming in already delegated of where we want it to go, all those things all of a sudden become a surprise. But when you already have them allocated for certain things, it's not a big deal. Like I remember the first year that we put this into place, we had been doing this for about 7 months, and then we got our annual tax bill, right? We always get from the federal government, and we owed something like $5,000. Now, before I had done this, and before I had an account system, that I had these smaller plates that I had everything divvied up on, I would be like, oh my gosh, I owe $5,000, man, I got to go sell some sets to pay for that. But because I had already had a system set into place, I already had the money, and I just transferred the money and wrote a check. Not a big deal because I had it already set up. And I remember Derek and I looking at each other and just being like, wow, that was so much easier. I already had the money, and then thinking that instead of thinking that I could go spend $5,000, I already had it allocated to something that I knew that was important to me, something that I wanted to take care of. So, so when we have those small accounts, that's where we get to use our money and get to leverage our money and make it go where we want it to go. So that's number 1, use smaller plates. Number 2, eat sequentially. There's something called the primacy effect. And what the primacy effect is that we place great importance on what we hear first, okay? So whatever we hear first, that always gets the most importance. Now I'm going to show you this in a really easy way because I'm going to give you guys 2 sets of words. Now, these 2 sets of words, one describes a sinner and one describes a saint, okay? So here we go. So the first set of words, evil, hate, anger, joy, care, love. Second set of words, love, care, joy, anger, hate, and evil. So when I ask most people, which one of those 2 sets of words describes the sinner and which one the saint? Most people would say, well, that first one did, right? You got that evil, hate, and anger in there. The second one describes the saint, right, with that love, care, and joy. The reality is those were, as you can probably tell, those were the same words. We just read them differently. But the reason our brain goes into says, man, that first set, that was definitely the sinner, is because that's what we place the greatest importance on. What we hear first, we heard that evil, hate, and anger. We place importance there. This is also true when it comes to your bank account. If you fund your savings, emergency fund, future dealership build out, building businesses in the GK77, tithing, college fund, new car, when you have these smaller plates and you start to fund what is most important to you first, that's where you place the greatest importance, right? And as we fund those bigger accounts, then as the money gets smaller and smaller, all of a sudden maybe we don't go out to eat at Baja Fresh because we only have X amount of dollars in our account, right? Because we only have $300 in our account as opposed to the $2,000 we just got from our commission check, because 500 went into the savings account, 500 went into our travel club, right? 200 went into my kids' college fund, and now I'm left with a smaller amount, right? But we know that our life is going the way that we want it to. So when you have multiple accounts and you fund what is important to you first, you will wake up a year from now significantly closer to your goals. Now, to show you this, we got something, the gentleman who's on the call today even too is Mr. AJ Lombard. And he showed a little thing that I posted on the ICE Call WhatsApp. And I want to show this to you guys. And if you look right here, it's a mathematical equation. And it's 1 to the 1 at the 365th power equals 1. Because we know that 1, did I just lose you guys there? We know that 1 times 1 equals 1. But if you change that 1 to 1.01%, just a very small change, but you do it over the year, that equals 37.7 more than when you started. And so when you get your accounts and the money comes in and you start to transfer that slowly, just little bits into these accounts, and you don't touch them, what happens is they start to grow and they get bigger and they get bigger and they get bigger. When you plan where your money is going to go, instead of just winding up somewhere, you end up choosing your destiny. I'm going to say that again. When you plan where your money is going to go, instead of just winding up somewhere, you choose your destiny. You know, it's like if you don't have, I read this quote this week. It says, if you don't have a vision, which Evelyn Sheridan talked about that on Friday, if you don't have a vision for where you will be in 5 years, you're already there. Right? And anybody who's a senior master dealer on the call will know that. If you don't plan your future, if you don't plan where you're going to be 1 year, 5 years from now, you're already there. If you plan your money, you're going to plan your future. So number 2. Number 3, real quickly, we're going to talk about remove temptation. Now, for some people, what we do is when we take it out of that main account and we put it in those smaller accounts, that gets it out and we say, hey, this is the only account that I have. These are all savings accounts. So I only have this amount to play with. And when you have that amount, that removes, for me, that removes temptation. For some people, maybe you're not as disciplined as that. Do whatever works for you. Whatever works for you. Who cares about anybody else? Some people have to take that money and actually put it in a different bank even, or do a bank transfer, which you can do, which is a really easy thing to do. But having them in different accounts, get the temptation out of there. So that's number 1. So remove temptation by not doing too much. This is the other part that he talked about in the book. When you remove temptation, don't do it in big chunks, do it in small chunks, but get it out of your main account is the thing. Even if it's $50 in your savings account or $100 in your savings account, get it out. And number 4, is have a rhythm. So number 1, we talked about use smaller plates. 2, eat sequentially. Number 3, remove the temptation. And then lastly, have a rhythm. Do it immediately when you get your check. What it does is that removes the temptation, that removes your temptation. When you do it automatically when you get your check, whenever that $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 comes in, if you automatically transfer it to the different accounts that you want, you get it out of your thing. When we do this method, it gets you out of the habit of big spending money for yes. So when you transfer that money out and you've got those different savings accounts, what it does is just like a rhythm with our eating, right? We don't wait till we're hungry and then we crash, then we eat too much and we overeat and then we're hungry, right? When we transfer the money and you've got those money in there, what it does is it stops those big cash spikes and those big cash dips. because you have more consistency in your business, even as a commissioned rep, right? I used to listen to Dave Ramsey, and I would never understand how he would talk about budgeting and all that until I moved to actually just having it in my bank account in these different accounts. But by doing that and transferring, it stops the spikes and it stops the skips. If you have $2,000 in your account and spend it, then 3 weeks later realize your car's registration's due along with rent, and then all of a sudden you have a bad sales week, you have a real problem. But if you've already taken that $3,000 and transferred it where it goes, and you only spend the amount of money you know you have to spend with, you're going to be in a lot better place. Having a rhythm for dispensing your money creates confidence in you and confidence in where your life is headed. So when you have that, that's what's going to build build your business, build your life because of where you're going. So I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to give you these 3 baby steps to apply what I've learned today, right? Use smaller plates, eat sequentially, right? Having that where the money goes, going first to our profit account and the things that are important, funding those first before we fund our bills, removing temptation, and having a rhythm. And here's your 3 baby steps. Number 1, go open 5 bank accounts at your bank, savings account. Most of the banks will let you open them for free. If they don't, change banks. They should allow you to open a lot of accounts for free, even if there's no balance. So number 1, get those open and nickname them whatever you're going to do. You're going to need to be the one that finds out what you want to fund. That's going to be for you to figure out. Just start. Just start. I wish I could have everybody on the phone say this. And I know you're all muted, but say it anyway. Just start. And so by just starting, thank you. And so get those down. Number 2, write down on paper how much you want in each account. So what I do is that I actually have an Excel spreadsheet that I took a picture of. I wrote it on the computer, and then I took a picture. And then every time I have money that comes in, I have on that picture all the different accounts and how much money or what percentage of my check goes into those each accounts. And so I have it written down where when that check comes in, I don't have to think about, oh, I'm going to put $100 towards a new car. I'm going to put $500 towards rent. And I just go down the account. So that's number 2. Number 3 is when you get your next check, start funding those accounts and watch your life start to grow. Get started and just start to fund those accounts. It'll be small. Do it in a small amount. And what you'll notice is that it takes, I don't know, I noticed it after about 2 months. At first, it was kind of annoying because there was a little bit less, but I started small, so I really didn't notice it, right? If you got a $1,000 check and you take 10% of that money and that goes into your savings account, or maybe 5% goes into your savings account and 5% goes into your emergency fund account or your travel account or entertainment account, that's only $100, right? We blow $100 on things all the time. But by having that where it automatically went and I got started, I noticed that at about month 3, my life started to change. I didn't have emergencies anymore. I was funding the things that I wanted, and it allowed me to say, I want to go make more money because now I know where my money's going. I'm not just making money and then blowing it. I'm just not just making money and it's sitting in the account and then I just go and I whittle it down and I try to remember all the bills that I've got. No, I've got a plan. I know where my money's going to go and my money works for me. I'm not just making it up. So guys, I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some direction when it comes to the money management and how us dealers, how master dealers, again, I want to say thank you to Melissa Curry for teaching me this system. It made such a big difference. And I hope that it does for you too. Like, get this in there, rewatch this video. We're going to post the replay and listen to this again and get started. The difference between people I talk to now and people I talk to a year from now that are financially free or financially on the path of where they want their life to go is because they implemented these systems. And I had been told about these systems for a number of years before I actually implemented it when somebody taught me this lesson right here. And I encourage you, do the work. Go open up the accounts. Write down your percentages or write down the amounts that you want to fund every month. And number 3, get started. And again, see your life grow. So what we're going to do now at the end, guys, we have something very special. This is especially for the Lone Star region. We have our winner from last week's ICE call. And so remember, every time that you call in, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, when you call in, you get an entry into the drawing for the ICE call that we do every Monday. And I want to invite you guys, don't forget, Wednesday's ICE call. And I know that we've got, I know the dealers in the Lone Star region have their call at the same time, so get all your people on. We've got Mark Jones. speaking on Wednesday from the UK, come to us live talking about how do we think bigger, thinking bigger. So with that, Teresa, who was our winner last week?
Alrighty, and drum roll, please. Whoop.
Who is that? A Cornell. Coronel?
Now, yes, I Coronel.
Hi, Cornell. Congratulations. Hi, welcome. Yes, great. What did she win, Teresa?
I believe it's a 3.5 quart bowl.
Woo! Congratulations to that. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much. We're going to go ahead and unmute the line, and we look forward to seeing you guys all on Wednesday.